Hello, beautiful people. How are y'all feeling today? I hope you guys are feeling fabulous. Today we are doing the Divine Love Tarot reading. You guys, I am so excited for this. I felt very called to do this since the theme of this week has been relationships. So whether you are single, whether you are in union right now, stay tuned guys, it's gonna be a good one. Right now are feeling triggered in our relationships, and this is actually a beautiful thing. Maybe not so much in the moment, guys, because triggering can be painful. Let's just be honest and put that right out there. It's not fun sometimes. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward and talk through some of the triggering that is happening within the context of relationships. And this applies whether you are single, whether you are in a relationship, or somewhere in between. Either way, we are all in connection, right? We are all in a relationship to self and to other. So one of the major themes that I'm noticing with Venus in Scorpio is that we are really getting clear with, clarity has been dropped, y'all, and Spirit has some cards for us. So we've got the 10 of Swords. Yet again, if you will remember, this also came up in our Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine readings, which I will link somewhere up here. And we also have the Ace of Swords and the Devil. So as I was saying before Spirit so rudely interrupted, just kidding, I'm grateful, please keep sending messages, is that with Venus and Scorpio, we're really getting clear with ourselves as to what it is that we truly desire, especially in the context of relationships. Now, this can be a bit tricky because in order to really tap into what our deepest desires are, we have to get clear on what we are no longer accepting. And for some of us, this is manifesting in cutting cords with some people in our lives, and we are really being challenged to release these past ways of being and these past ways of connecting with others and getting clear as to what feels healthy and aligned for us and what no longer feels in alignment with our highest growth. Now remember, this video applies whether you are watching it during the date of the release. Whenever you are watching it is when this message will apply to you. Energy's funny like that. It can work in mysterious and magical ways. However, if we look at the science behind it, it becomes not so mystical. And the card that wanted to come out was the Six of Wands. So some of us are being asked to do the painful work of clearing out the clutter from our closets, right? When we are welcoming new energy into our relational spaces. Let's see what knowledge Spirit dropped for us this time. All right, and we have the Seven of Swords and the Empress wanted to pop out as well. So we are really having to get crystal clear with what it is that we are allowing and welcoming into our lives and what no longer feels good for us. So for a lot of us, this is past selves and the ways in which we have allowed things into our lives, into our relationships that are actually quite detrimental to us, and not listening to our intuition and moving through this world in this kind of small and stifled way, right? So let's really explore what's going on here with this reading and dive right into it. So the first card, yet again, to pop out has been the 10 of Swords. Guys, we are closing out cycles. It's happening. So as we are closing out these old cycles, really get a clear picture in your mind, in your heart, about what it is that you no longer want to bring with you into the future. I was talking with some friends today about the wounded feminine and wounded masculine energies, and a lot of us are really being challenged, right? We can be challenged through the triggering to level up spiritually. And part of this spiritual leveling up is learning to break old cycles and old patterning. So for the wounded feminine, this can manifest as allowing people to kind of just walk all over your boundaries and not really creating these firm boundaries for yourself for what feels safe and good for you within the context of relationship, and allowing these things to kind of be trampled over. And another thing the wounded feminine tends to allow is this domineering wounded masculine, right? So we kind of give up all our power when we enter into partnership with the wounded feminine, and what we're doing is saying, here's my love, here's my power, take it all, you know? And the message that we're sending is that my worth becomes your worth because I'm outsourcing my control, my sense of self, and my power to you, my partner. On the other hand of the spectrum, the wounded masculine can come across as needing to control and needing to create safety. Because what is control really? It's a safety mechanism to create some sense of perceived stability and security. So in the wounded masculine, this can manifest as being overly controlling of our partners and not allowing freedom and space for expression, and often creating this very unsafe, shaky, inconsistent container for the feminine and not allowing the expression of feminine emotions. Now, whether you are single or in partnership, these things can manifest within ourselves, in our relationship to self also. So with the continued death and rebirth of these cycles, I love that right after the Ten of Swords came out, the Ace of Swords followed, because the aces always are representative of new beginnings, new starts, especially when in the context of relationship. This represents new starts in expression, in communication, in the sharing of ideas. So a lot of times this is also a new beginning in how we choose to connect with this person, right? Through communication. How are we choosing to speak our truth, our authentic truth? Side note, authentic truth is not an excuse to be a jerk. And when we say speak your authentic truth, what we are really talking about here is the truth that comes from an aligned and heart-centered space that is for the greater good and highest learning of everyone involved. So as we continue to close out these old cycles and we are born and led into this new beginning, let's become really clear with ourselves and figure out what it is that we truly desire. What is it that makes us feel connected? How do we want to communicate and express ourselves to those we love? Now, this journeying into this beautiful ooey gooey land of self-expression and connection and intimacy, vulnerability, these things all require self-reflection, right? And sometimes the things that we are confronted with can be very uncomfortable, as shown here by Mr. Devil. So the devil is really inviting us to closely examine the ways in which our ego is keeping us trapped. Now, I'm not a subscriber to the death to the ego branch of spirituality that completely demonizes the ego. However, we do have to learn how to work with the ego and to not allow the ego to hijack our being, right? Because the ego is very reactionary. We want to defend the ego or to feed the ego in a way, and the ego itself can never be fulfilled. However, it is a useful tool for the sense of self that we materialize into through these bodies into this material realm. So knowing this, how can we allow the ego to be heard and remain objective to the narrative that the ego is trying to feed us? So the devil is also about confronting our shadow, and often when we are breaking these patterns, these limiting cycles, we are confronted with these things that don't feel so good about ourselves. Trust me guys, I know it is not easy. Please be gentle with yourselves in the exploration of this. So for some of us, I am hearing that, how do I say this? And disclaimer, this might be a little triggering for some of us. You guys, sometimes we are the problem, okay? So claim that, own that, take ownership, take responsibility for that. Raise your hand, say, hey guys, I'm the problem. And recognize the ways in which you yourself are the problem, because it is about ownership. It is about accountability and owning how we are personally choosing to perpetuate these patterns. In this way, we can become trapped. If we are actively engaging in a pattern of behavior and still expecting the external result to change, right? Who are we really fooling? We're only fooling ourselves here. So get really clear with yourself on how you are still contributing to your current patterning, and how can you free yourself from this patterning? How can we hold space for those wounded children inside of us, your wounded inner child, and really become gentle with that? Take that mothering or fathering role towards yourself and recognize that all of these unhealthy ways of being in relationships are what we learned. This was a survival adaptation, a mechanism for us to feel safe in childhood. However, now that we are adults, we get to choose how we want to connect now. A+ for adulting, y'all. I'm receiving a message that for some of us, we had very emotionally unavailable parents, people who were not supportive of us because they didn't know how to show up in that way. And for some of us that aren't used to expressing ourselves emotionally, this can be a challenge. And we tend to hold this emotional part of ourselves in this iron prison, right? And not allow this self to reach out perhaps when we need help or when we want connection. Because somewhere in the back of our minds, there is this little voice that says, it's not safe. And I'm also receiving a message that for some of us, it truly is not safe in our relationships. So really take some time and evaluate the emotional safety of your relationship and reflect on why you are still keeping yourselves trapped. And the next card we have for today's reading is the 6 of Wands. So a lot of us are kind of transcending this devil archetype, right? And the ways in which we are continuing to feed the ego and connecting on a very surface-based level that is no longer feeling good to us, that is no longer nourishing us. And part of this transcendence and moving beyond this known way of being is to allow ourselves to freely express, to be fully vulnerable, to be fully transparent and authentic. Yes, I know, guys, it is such a scary feeling. I can absolutely relate to that. So after we confront the internal devil, right, and we have made a conscious change to move in a new direction, to embrace this new way of being, to do the inner work, the inner healing, so that we can show up in relationships the way that we desire and receive what it is that we desire. This is when we can really begin to rise above our current situation. You know, whatever that means for you in creating this new way of being in love, in relationships, and defining what that means for us. This rising of the consciousness comes through intentional work and intentional choice. And here's the thing, guys, with conscious choice, it's not an easy choice because it's so simple. It's so much easier just to fall into our conditioning, fall back into our patterning because it feels comfortable, it feels like home, it feels safe because we know it. However, when it is at the expense of our emotional and spiritual safety, is it really the wisest choice? And when we look at the symbolism of this card, this butterfly just rising up above all of these obstacles and all of these challenges, right? She's just freshly grown her new wings. The question is though, where are we being directed to fly to next? As we begin to rise into this new version of ourselves that we are creating, that we are healing, there is a tendency to kind of slip back into this old way of being, to what feels familiar. So with the Seven of Swords, the message that we are seeing here is that sometimes there is a desire for secrecy, for what we perceive is safe, right? So if we look at the imagery here, this fox is kind of just curled up in his own tail and, you know, kind of frightened of showing himself to the world. And I think a lot of us are encountering that, especially in our most intimate relationships. It can be scary to be vulnerable. It can be scary to put yourself out there. However, with being our authentic selves, this is when we're going to attract what is meant for us. The universe doesn't know what to give us unless we give it a really clear picture of who it is that we are. Only then can it begin to bless us with things that are actually in alignment to who we are. It can feel scary, it can feel a little bit shaky to kind of get into that, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna judge me for being who I actually am state, and that's okay. It's okay to hold those emotions, to hold those experiences with gentle kindness and compassion, and recognize that it is a journey, it is a process. It will take time to create these incremental changes that you are looking to make. And the final card for our reading is the Empress. I love this card. The Empress is Earth Mother energy incarnate, right? So this is that divine feminine energy that we are seeking to heal right now. And this has been such a theme for all of us lately, is healing our feminine wounds, our feminine energy. So with this, really embracing our emotional sides, really embracing our ability to receive, and removing any blockages that we have towards that. Do you feel worthy of receiving? Do you feel worthy of the love that you desire? When we look at that from a deep level, right? What are the reasons why we feel unworthy? Why we feel undeserving of something? The strength of the feminine comes from being incredibly intuitive, incredibly compassionate, and also having those same things for ourselves and working on this internally first and foremost, and then we will begin to see it reflected back to us in the external world. We got some powerful cards for a very powerful reading today, guys, and I'm going to close it out with one final card from my White Light Oracle deck. And as I'm shuffling here, I am receiving a message for some of you that you can have all that you desire. You can have what it is that you need in the context of relationship. I think a lot of us get caught up in this questioning of, am I even allowed to have this wonderful thing that I want? Or am I deserving of this? Or is this even actually possible? Is this type of love, is this type of connection, this type of relationship, is this a real thing? And you guys, yes, it absolutely is. So some of us really have to work on the love that we have for ourselves and the beliefs that we have surrounding what we are worthy of and even what is simply possible or impossible. Alrighty, and the card that we have today is Dakini of Infinite Light. Now, I absolutely love that this card came out for us today in our reading. For those of us who don't know, a Dakini is a supernatural divine feminine being. So the theme of this reading is very much centered around the feminine. Now, whether you identify as male or female, or you're in a heterosexual or homosexual relationship, it does not matter. We all have both masculine and feminine energies within all of us. So healing the feminine really applies to all of us, especially when you look at the imbalance of the energies in the world, in the collective consciousness as a whole right now. Healing the feminine is crucial to our evolution. So this Dakini is really asking us to embody the love, right? That love, the light that we seek. First, we must create it within ourselves. And in order to do this, we need to really tune inward. Once again, tune inward, guys, and listen to the messages that are coming through for us. You know, when we call on the feminine energies around us to assist us with our healing, sometimes the learning is gentle and compassionate and enlightening and beautiful and fairy-like and all these wonderful things, right? And sometimes we get the wild woman wolf mother, right? And her teachings are not easy, you know, and we need both. We need both the gentle, nurturing side, and we need the wolf mother that's going to push us out of the den, out of our comfort zone, and embrace something new, a new way of being that we have not yet explored. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I hope this reading served you well. If it did and you would like a little more clarity around your current love and relationship situation, hit me up for a tarot reading. You can find me on Instagram at lotuscoaching13 or on Facebook. I am also offering pay what you can personal coaching sessions through the end of 2020. Hit me up, DM me on Instagram at lotuscoaching13, and I would love to connect with you and work with you. Have a beautiful rest of your day.